Look at the historical record of human intelligence, and Sir Isaac Newton occupies a permanent place near the very top. This is a man who possessed the supreme intellectual capacity to map the complex laws of physics and decode the gravitational forces of the universe. Yet during the 1720s South Sea bubble, he lost the equivalent of $4 million. Caught in a speculative frenzy, he watched his less educated neighbors amass paper fortunes and poured his own capital in at the absolute peak of the market. He could calculate the precise orbital mechanics of celestial bodies, but he was completely defenseless against his own fear of missing out. If the mind that discovered gravity can be led into absolute financial ruin by social contagion, raw computational intelligence provides zero protection against irrational economic behavior. We operate under a highly pervasive assumption. If you are smart and you do well on standardized tests, long-term financial security will naturally follow. This chart visualizes data from economist Jay Zagorski's 2007 longitudinal study. Along the bottom, we see an individual's intelligence quotient, and on the vertical axis, their annual income. The line moves steadily upward. Every single point increase in an IQ score reliably predicts a higher annual salary. But watch what happens when we look at the exact same demographics' accumulated net worth. The new line flatlines. The statistical correlation completely disappears. According to the data, elite professionals with high cognitive scores experience rates of credit card max-outs and bankruptcies that are equal to, or sometimes greater than, those with average test scores. High intelligence is a highly efficient machine for earning a salary, but it lacks the internal hardware required to convert that income into actual wealth. We assume that highly educated minds, the types of professionals trained at elite institutions, are naturally resistant to marketing traps and poor financial choices. Psychological research on the bias blind spot tells a different story. Cognitive sophistication actually makes individuals significantly blinder to their own behavioral flaws. This is driven by the introspection illusion. Highly intelligent people look inward, review their complex logical processes, and mistakenly conclude that their decisions are entirely objective. When a high IQ mind makes a terrible investment based on status or impulse, it doesn't recognize the error. Instead, it uses its advanced analytical capacity to build an airtight, highly complex framework to justify the mistake. A high IQ does not cure financial bias. It simply equips the brain to build much more sophisticated excuses for its own ruin. To understand why this happens, we have to look at biology. The human neurological architecture evolved for immediate calorie procurement and short-term survival. It is completely mismatched for modern, abstract financial systems. Under functional MRI scans, researchers at Stanford mapped out how the brain handles transactions. They discovered that parting with physical resources triggers the exact same neurological pathways as experiencing literal physical pain. On this 3D model of the brain, the area lighting up in red is the anterior insula. When you physically hand over cash, this region flares up with a visceral distress signal. It acts as a biological alarm, stopping you from depleting your resources. The modern financial industry found a way to bypass this alarm. The technological workaround arrived in the mid-20th century with the invention of the credit card. Through payment decoupling, modern contactless cards and digital wallets remove the tactile sensation of losing physical currency. The anterior insula goes dark, and the dopamine-driven nucleus accumbens operates with absolutely zero emotional opposition. Modern professionals are not outsmarted by complex math. They are slowly drained by a corporate ecosystem that surgically disabled their brain's built-in defense mechanism. Thinking is biologically expensive. The prefrontal cortex burns immense amounts of bodily glucose during intense intellectual labor. To survive the workday, the brain operates as a cognitive miser, defaulting to lazy, automatic decision-making to conserve energy. Modern business models are explicitly engineered to exploit this state of baseline mental fatigue. Software-as-a-service platforms and automated subscription models bypass conscious cost-benefit evaluations entirely. Small, recurring monthly payments rely on the brain's natural aversion to administrative tasks. The result is a highly predictable wealth extraction pipeline, harvesting affluent consumers like automated facilities. This cognitive overload also bleeds into wealth management. Fatigued, highly intelligent investors frequently fall victim to the illusion of control, overtrading in chaotic digital markets and losing capital to transaction fees. The modern economy functions as a highly optimized algorithmic cage. It simply waits for the exact moment the intelligent mind exhausts its executive reserves and then quietly siphons its resources. Cognitive scientists divide the brain's functions into two distinct systems. The algorithmic mind solves complex equations and earns high salaries. But it is the reflective mind that manages personal belief systems, controls impulses, and actually accumulates wealth. You can possess staggering algorithmic intelligence and remain completely broke. World-class academic economists frequently display minimal personal net worth, precisely because they lack this reflective behavioral capacity. Protecting yourself requires a tactical shift. You have to deliberately sabotage frictionless technology and manually inject sensory friction back into your daily transactions. Deleting saved credit cards, bypassing one-click purchases, and forcing physical, tactile transactions reawakens the biological pain of paying. It puts a physical barricade between your tired prefrontal cortex and the corporate algorithms trying to exploit it. Escaping the cage means accepting that raw intellect is often a liability in the consumer market, and strict, high-friction behavioral rules are the only effective defense. Building long-term wealth in the modern era is not a computational math problem. It is an emotional, biological discipline. True financial freedom requires you to actively resist the evolutionary programming that demands immediate gratification and outmaneuver the institutional systems designed to harvest it. A high IQ is merely the raw fuel powering the modern economy. It is entirely up to you whether that intellect burns to enrich a corporation or builds an escape route for yourself.